unyielding bill sponsor who is your 30th and 31st bill in this committee. Understand. So Delegate Frazier-Hidalgo, we need to go first and second. 1482, sir. Do you have a panel? Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'll remind you that, yes, this might be many of my bills, but, well, you know, I'll leave it there. All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming in on Monday afternoon early. I'm here to introduce House Bill 1482, uninsured driving penalties. As most of you probably already know that have been on this committee for quite some time, the Maryland Automobile Insurance Fund, MAIF, does a lot of things. We'll talk about some of the things that they do in the next bill, but one of the things they do is they manage the uninsured motorist fund. And that's an amount of money that is dedicated every year to ensure that if you are in an accident with an uninsured motorist, that you can receive some level of compensation, since you're not going to be seeking compensation. You're unable to seek compensation other than a lawsuit in relation to the person that's being held at fault. So that fund is coming up a little bit short this year. So one of the things that we're doing, like we're doing across the board, is we're going to raise some penalties which haven't been raised in a long time, to help make up for that, and also to ensure that some of that money comes directly from those penalties directly into the uninsured motorist fund, that bucket. I will let you know that there is an amendment, because unfortunately the bill originally was $2.5 million to go into this fund, and since then there's been I guess a little bit more of a shortfall. So there is an amendment to take it to $3 million, and that will keep that fund solvent for the coming year. And that last $500,000 is a recent development, but that's just where we are with the economy and with penalties. But the penalties in the future should go a long way in helping to shore those up. And again, they haven't been raised in quite some time. And with that, I will kick it to the professionals on the panel to speak in a lot more detail than I can on the workings of the fund. Senator.
Good afternoon, Chair Wilson and Vice Chair Crosby and committee members. For the record, Sandra Dotson with Maryland Automobile Insurance Fund, or MAIF, here in support of House Bill 1482 with amendments. We've provided a detailed written testimony. The House Bill 1482 provides much needed funding for the uninsured division of MAIF. And as Delegate mentioned, increases the uninsured motorist penalty fines, which have not been increased since 1991. The uninsured division is part of MAIF, but is separate and distinct of what you would think is our normal insurance operation. The uninsured division was created in 1957. We've administered that program since 1973. Its only source of funding is a portion of these uninsured motorist penalty fines, collections from at-fault drivers, and investment income. The uninsured division pays claims to state residents who have incurred damage, either bodily injury or property damage, due to the fault of an uninsured motorist. Most eligible claimants are passengers in uninsured vehicles or pedestrians who have been struck by an uninsured vehicle and have no other collectible insurance. The funding is exclusive for the use of the uninsured division only. The current fine allocation of $4.5 million with CPI collections and investment income is not keeping pace with the activity in the uninsured division. The year-end surplus is a negative $1.3 million. It's anticipated that surplus deficit will grow without additional funding. Additionally, the uninsured division surplus has declined significantly due to $41 million in VRFA transfers from the uninsured division to the general fund. The additional funding as amended was 2.5. The sponsor will be offering amendment to increase that to $3 million, which hopefully will bring the surplus up to a positive balance, and we will be able to meet the mission of paying claims. MAFE urges a favorable report with amendments on House Bill 1482.
Good afternoon. My name is Dennis Carroll. I'm an attorney with the Maryland Automobile Insurance Fund. I'm here really just to answer questions. I'm assisting Senator Dotson. Thank you.
Doug and Aaron's.
Go first.
Sure. I guess this would be for Mr. Carroll. The problem we seem to be running into as General Assembly is it sounds like financially this isn't a viable way of moving forward because of the consistent, write downs and things that we have to do. Does your department understand the challenges that we keep bringing year after year with having to give money from the general fund?
We do, but this is a separate fund from the insured operations.
Sure.
We don't sell premiums or collect premiums or anything like that. Our sole source of funds is from the uninsured motorists. And, we don't have any control over how many claims we get. Between 2022 and 2023, claims and reserves went up over $2 million, while the funding only creeped up by the CPI of 200,000. So.
Yeah, I guess it's just an overall problem that I'm having with MAPE as far as the financial viability, making sure I feel like we're throwing money into a well. I'm not sure if it's because the rates aren't high enough, whatever's going on. Anyway, it's just, that's a conversation for another day, but we do need to come to some resolution here.
Yeah, we understand, and that, dealing with the assessment and that whole process. But this, although we administer it, it's wholly separate.
I totally understand, sir.
Yeah.
Totally.
Okay.
Just, it's part of your
Thank you.
organization, so I had that brief question. I know Doug and Aaron has something.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'm trying to get to how these claims come about. Now, are we at a deficit because we've had an abundance of claims against this fund, or has inflation affected it, or can you help me out?
It's a combination, Delegate. We've seen an increase in claims activity. Again, this is a separate fund, separate and distinct from our insurance operation. We just administer the program for the state for those residents that have nowhere else to go. The cost of the claims, with inflation has significantly increased over the years. And the amount we receive of the fines is not keeping up with that increase in claims activity and the cost of claims.
You say there's been an increase in claims, though. Can you give me an idea how much that's increased over the last couple of years?
There's about 600 claims that are reported each year. And the cost has gone from about 6,000 to 10,000 to settle because the cost of claims across the board.
I want to know the number of claims. I'm sorry.
Well, while you're looking that up, Delegate, I do think it's important for the committee to know that nationwide, it's about 12.6% of vehicle drivers that drive uninsured, and in Maryland, it's 14.1%. Just a little factoid. So 14.1% of Marylanders that are driving are actually uninsured.
Is that? Oh,
That's correct.
no, I was getting to a point. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I just want to know the number. But my comment is, what else is there besides raising and finding more money? What are we not doing that could slow these claims down? I mean, David just said, the delegate just said, we have a larger number than most states.
It's people that are uninsured.
I know
Yeah,
that.
so if I'm a passenger in a vehicle that's uninsured, I don't own a car, that means I have nowhere to go except for this fund.
I'm looking for another way to attack this by why do we have a large number of uninsured? And how would we go about policing that or trying to stop that? That's what I'm getting.
One of them may be raising these fines that haven't been increased since 1991. And you could say that the average maximum penalty is cheaper than buying a policy.
So raising a fine will get a poor person that can't afford insurance or won't afford insurance. That's going to make them buy insurance.
No, I'm not saying that, but I'm also saying we're trying to meet the statutory mission to pay these claims. And there's just not funds to do it. They come to us, we don't control the number that are coming. The cost of them has increased. The only amount we receive is this statutory portion. And collections are very difficult from the at-fault drivers. In fact, 50% of the claims last year involved hit and runs, so there's nobody to go after.
Okay, so we're 50% of them we're not able to collect on. And
That was from last year,
okay, that's on what
2023.
hit and runs. What is the average? What is the number that we can collect on? What do we get? What percentage?
It's about $600,000 we collect per year, 600,000 to 700,000 on.
Okay, I missed that. Maybe I didn't say my question right. 50% hit and runs. What's the out of 100? How many people actually pay that get caught?
Oh, I'd have to go back and
Okay,
look, Delegate.
all right, thank you.
I don't
All right,
know.
thank you.
It's very difficult. You're trying to collect from someone that was already uninsured. We get a judgment against that individual and we try to collect. We lost the ability.
What it sounds like to me is a lot of this stuff, we're 50% aren't paying, 50, we can't find them, we need to do something else also. But thank you.
And I will add, Delegate, to your point, I'm not sure the exact number, but most of the fines, I think, go to the general fund or the TTF. Only a small fraction of the fines actually go to the MAIF uninsured division. So that's just a little factoid I think it's important to understand.
And I'd add to that, the 30% goes to MVA. School safe funds gets 600,000, 2 million goes to the vehicle theft prevention fund. We get about 4.5 million per year, and the rest goes to the general fund. I know in the past fiscal year, MVA collected over $56 million in these fines, and it's been higher other years.
Again, just to follow up on that, just so you're saying if MAIF got the more portion of the fines would be better off, is what you're saying, more of a portion.
To run the uninsured division only, it's specifically for the anything extra that's collected would go to the general fund.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, ma'am, and I just need you because I want, my vice chair wasn't paying attention, but this is important. Could you please repeat that breakdown again?
Of who receives the fines?
Correct.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, Chair. 30% goes to MVA. School safe funds receives 600,000. 2 million to the Vehicle Theft Prevention Council. We received today by statute about 4.5 million for the uninsured division, and the remainder goes to the general fund. 56 million in fines was collected last fiscal year. It's been higher other years.
Well, I appreciate that little, that last little bit of it, or would you call it a snippet? Would you call it?
A little factoid. I think it's
Factoid,
just
yeah.
plays a little piece, Mr.
But,
Chair.
but I think, no, that's actually very important because
Yeah.
it brings a perspective of some of the money we may have to dump back in is we probably either could collect it, either way, we understand those. So
Thank you.
very much.
That-
and
that's,
We're
yeah, thank
good.
you.
I don't think there's any more questions. Is there? Delegate Harrison.
Thank you so much. So I'm trying to understand, why have not the fines been raised since 1991? I mean, we're getting a lot of this from multiple agencies. Well, this hasn't been raised in 40 years. It hasn't been raised in 40 years. And all of a sudden this year, when we're in a crunch, now everybody wants to raise fines. And it's very frustrating for us to have to make those decisions when it's our constituents who are coming back to us and saying, why do you keep raising fines? Why do you keep raising fines? Or raising fees or taxes or whatever Delegate Fisher wants to call them.
Delegate Harrison, I would say there's been attempts to raise these fines and they've just stalled in committee.
In 40 years,
The
in 1991, I don't think at least one of my children wasn't even born yet. Oh, Lord. I just can't believe that the General Assembly in 30 years has not thought that some of these things we need to keep up with the rate of inflation.
And I will say and I don't have that with me today, the last attempt was a bill in the Senate. And again, it was introduced and it just did not, it was probably been in the last 10 years and there's been some other attempts. They just have never, there's a hearing and it just never comes out of committee.
The other question that I have, and this is the last one, is when an individual purchases a car, and not necessarily a new car, but a used car, when they register it, they're supposed to pay for uninsured motorist insurance. And so are you saying that people are not doing that?
So what happens, so let's say today, this is going back to what happens with the uninsured division claims. I'm a passenger in an uninsured vehicle and I've been injured. You then, if you own a car, you could go use your uninsured motorist coverage as underinsured coverage and have your claim paid. This is for an individual that doesn't own a car. I mean, they just don't own a vehicle. There's no household coverage. There's no other option except for this fund. And if that person the passenger owned a vehicle and they were uninsured, they'd be barred from coming to the fund for that claim because they didn't.
I understand that part, but I'm speaking of the owner of the vehicle. They're a passenger in someone's vehicle who should have uninsured motorist coverage. If they don't have anything else, they should have that.
They're required by law to purchase uninsured motorist coverage.
So then are you saying then that some of these claims, the people who are in the car, they're not able to claim against the owners uninsured?
They didn't have insurance. Let's say
If I may,
Yeah.
this also includes pedestrians and cyclists.
But the
Like,
owner of the vehicle has the insurance.
But they were uninsured at the time of the accident, so their car is not gonna get paid. The passenger is
So they've let their insurance lapse.
correct.
Exactly.
correct,
Okay,
sorry,
thank
I'm
you
sorry.
very
They had
much.
no,
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Why, in your opinion, are we 2 points higher than the national average of uninsured?
Could be, Maryland Maryland in general has raised their minimal limits, to 30/60. That's higher than other states. The cost of insurance has significantly increased. MVA, charges, I mean, there are, they identify who's uninsured and they assess and collect these fees. I know affordability is an issue. We know 40% of our insureds are canceled for non-payment. It's just simply unaffordable, and people are trying to do the right thing when they register their vehicle and buy a policy. But we see our average cancellation for policies that cancel is about 110 days. So, and we'll see people come in and out of Maryland Auto because they got canceled, then they come back. So I think it's numerous reasons of why people are just not staying. It's expensive.
Just
For some people, it's just simply unaffordable.
Okay, it's just interesting to me because, I've been down here 10 years, so just long enough to be dangerous. And, we've done a lot to expand MAFE access, and I just find it interesting that we're still, 15% roughly higher than the national average as far as uninsured. So I appreciate your input.
I know, like, for example, the cost of insurance in the Baltimore metro area is more expensive. So again, I think it comes down to the ability to pay, people, keeping their cars, our insureds have very much older vehicles and they're still expensive.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just briefly, I mean, I don't know, what, 6 years, so probably not as long as Seth, probably not nearly as dangerous, but I mean, I know that there have been many efforts to raise the uninsured motorist fine since I've been here. I don't know if there's ever been an exact bill, but I know almost every year this topic has come up, and whether it's been in ECM or appropriations, that debate has taken place. And I know Delegate Watson, who went from this committee to that committee, she was having a myriad of conversations. And I guess my question is, relative to our surrounding states, where are our uninsured motorist fines in comparison?
I believe, and I think we're high compared to the other states, but other states have different limits. Delaware minimal limits, I think, are significantly lower than ours. In Virginia today, you can pay $500 to drive uninsured. That's going to that gap will be closed this July 1st. I know everybody's heard about numerous Maryland residents going to Virginia to register their vehicles because they can pay $500 and drive uninsured. So I don't know the exact answer, Delegate Crosby. We haven't delved deep into that. I know there's some budget language out there right now for MDA to look at that in the interim in collaboration with us and MIA.
Okay, thank you.
See no more questions for this panel. I believe we have Jason Weintraub is the last witness.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Jason Weintraub here on behalf of the American Property Casualty Insurance Association. We are favorable with amendments on the bill as introduced. To the extent the committee moves forward, we would like a little bit more time to update our forms and would request a January 1, 2025 effective date. Thank you very much. Happy to take any questions.
Is there a reason?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, we need a little bit more time to update our forms. It has a July 1
And
effective date.
I asked this question, and to my knowledge now, forms are no longer these things that are printed and floating around. There's something, it's literally just on a computer. You adjust and change the wording, correct?
I'm happy to get more information back to you. This is the feedback we're getting from our members.
Got you. It's not some, because you understand my question, right? Is it's not like the old days we have a bunch of things in triplicate sitting to the side. Now everybody's got it on the computer. So do you know if the changes are considered that dramatic?
I would have to get back to you on that.
Okay, yeah, because I understand the question. I just don't really see the point in this new technological age of delaying something that I would think would take a day or two to figure out.
So, Mr. Chair, my understanding is we need a little bit of time to update the forms and also have those forms approved by the insurance administration.
And that's why I'll ask MIA when they come up, because I would not think that would take that much time either. I'm sure this could be done in a week, but we'll find out. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
I believe that concludes this hearing. Moving on to the next hearing. Another delegate, Fraser Hidalgo Bill. And if you have your panel, please bring them up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And Jason, you might as well come up and sit down too. Just maybe just sit on the far end of the delegate. No.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, thank you again for allowing me to present House Bill 1483. For the record, Maryland State Delegate David Fraser Hidalgo. House Bill 1483, Insurance Maryland Automobile Insurance Fund Assessment. So for those of you that don't know, this is to some degree kind of in a way a little bit of a companion to the previous bill. Some of the questions that you asked are probably more relevant to this bill, where we can really kind of dive into it. But essentially, MAIF, as you know, has the job of insuring the uninsurable. And over the years, there has been a budget surplus, and that has slowly gone down over the last 20 years for a variety of reasons, to the point now where we are kind of on the verge in the next year or two of potentially an assessment. And that assessment would affect insurance, all of us that have automobile insurance. So what this bill does is it works with MIA and gives MIA a little bit more flexibility and a little bit more authority to look at the rates that MAIF charges, and gives them more authority to make recommendations and or help MAIF to better understand potentially what and how to fulfill their charge. There's a lot in the bill when it comes to how you define what a turn down is. Currently, there's supposed to be 2 turn downs before you become MAIF, before you're eligible for MAIF. It clears some of that language up. It also clears up language as to what what the power of MIA is over MAIF. And with that, I will turn it to Kathleen to go into details and have a very open conversation about a very complex issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. My name is Kathleen Borain. I serve as the Maryland Insurance Commissioner. I appreciate the opportunity to appear today. We did put in written testimony So I will, I guess, be brief in my remarks, and then we'll be able to take questions. With me is Bill Fawcett, who is the Associate Commissioner for Property and Casualty. He's available to answer questions as well. So we appreciate the introduction of House Bill 1483. We think that it provides an opportunity for some small incremental steps in order to bring MAIF back into kind of a financially stable situation. The MIA is supporting this bill with amendments. There are 3 amendments that we've discussed with the sponsor. The first is to take out of the bill the notion that we would approve an assessment. An assessment is a math formula. So if Maryland Auto has a year where they are running in a deficit and they don't have any surplus left to pay that deficit, that is when an assessment is triggered. That's the end process, and that's just math. There is no basis on which I would or you would want me to deny that assessment. So the language that would give the commissioner the authority to approve, modify, or deny is not really a feasible thing, because otherwise Maryland Auto wouldn't have enough money to operate in the next month. So we would suggest that that concept be removed from the bill. But what we have proposed is that there be 2 additions to the bill that we think can help right size the situation that we're in. And so the first is to look at eligibility. So as the delegate mentioned, for a long time, for the past 50 years since MAIF was formed. Want me to keep going?
Keep going.
So since MAIF was formed, the idea has been that it exists as the insurer of last resort. It's there for people who can't get insurance anywhere else, typically because they have a bad driving record. So back in 1973, when mandatory rating came in, that's a great idea. Everybody's got to have mandatory insurance. But what if you can't buy insurance? You have to have a vehicle for that. You have to be able to do that. So that's why MAIF was created, to provide that. So at that time, there was not a lot of coverage for people that had bad histories, right? So the idea was that if you get turned down by 2 companies in a world where maybe you had 5 or 6 or 7 writing, that was a good indication that you couldn't be underwritten and you could come to me. Fast forward 50 years to where we are now, we have many, many, many more insurers, and we have a lot of insurers that write in that quote unquote substandard market. So that 2 turn down rule doesn't necessarily actually tell us whether or not someone can get insurance, particularly since, you can have somebody that applies to say USAA, they're not eligible because they don't have any military service, but that turn down counts. So what we've suggested here is that Maryland move to an approach that 18 other states, including many of the states in the surrounding area, use, which is to say, you can come to MAIF and you can apply to MAIF if you can say in good faith that you've tried to get insurance from an admitted carrier and you can't get it, or you can't get it for a lower cost. Because there are some people for whom the private market will be more expensive and MAIF could be less expensive. Why is that? Because MAIF doesn't use credit scoring, but other companies do. So there may be circumstances where MAIF is appropriately more affordable. And this affordability is a transparent way of allowing people who are challenged in the admitted market to buy insurance from MAIF. So the first suggestion is that we bring MAIF's eligibility requirements in line with a more modern approach, recognizing how much more insurance is available in the market. The second suggestion that we've made is that MAIF, when MAIF was first created, MAIF wasn't put into a competitive rating regime. That happened in the early 2000s when MAIF was moved from what's called prior approval. You've heard me talk before here about private approval versus competitive rating. And MAIF was put into a competitive rating circumstance, which in some ways, if you think about it, doesn't make sense, because who's MAIF's competition? MAIF exists for people who can't get insurance anywhere else. And competitive rating means that the market is controlling the rate, not you. And in a competitive rating circumstance, the insurance commissioner doesn't approve rates. They have the authority to disapprove them, if they find, among other things, that they're inadequate. But before I can find that a rate is inadequate under competitive rating, I have to find that that rate, if it is continued, will endanger the solvency of the company. Now, in the private market, companies don't typically file inadequate rates in order to become insolvent, because in addition to their stakeholders to whom they are accountable, I have all kinds of tools. I have all kinds of rules that those companies have to follow, or they have to meet what we call risk-based capital standards. And they have to have huge buffers that we monitor closely. So they don't get near that point because of rating. MAIF, on the other hand, I have to wait, and this is the first year where this has actually occurred since 1989, where an assessment is likely to be triggered. So under the competitive rating rules, I actually have to wait until MAIF is already over that cliff or at that cliff before I can find that there's an inadequacy. And yet we don't have financial standards for MAIF that they have to meet, like a private company would be. So don't get me wrong, I don't think that there's anybody at MAIF that's, trying to send MAIF over the cliff. I think we've had lots of good conversations about how we want to fix the current situation. But one of the ways to help fix that current situation is to bring them back to prior approval rating and have us be able to work with them and evaluate their rates from an actuarial standard, as opposed to this sort of false competitive rating standard that isn't really relevant for MAIF. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, but those are the three, the three amendments and the two minor, what we would consider to be incremental changes in order to help MAIF reestablish its stability.
Bill, do you have anything?
No.
You just here for questions?
Just here for questions.
Go ahead, Jason, then we'll get to the questions.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Again, for the record, Jason Weintraub here on behalf of the American Property Casualty Insurance Association. We are favorable with amendments on House Bill 1483 as introduced. APCIA, we are a little bit unclear why the bill is necessary as introduced. We appreciate MIA sharing their amendments with us over the weekend. We look forward to working more with the committee and the agency on their proposed amendments.
Well, I know we have one or two questions. Kathleen, I have a question. I want to say this because if you could you please refresh a member of this body what an assessment is and how it impacts us?
Sure. So an assessment is, so let's go back to the beginning. When MAIF was first created, it was a quasi-state agency, didn't have any money. So the way in which MAIF was capitalized to begin with, that it had a pot of money that it could start to pay claims from, was through an assessment, meaning that insurance companies in the market, there's an association that was created of all the insurers that write motor vehicle insurance in the state. And that association, those members were assessed an amount of money to capitalize MAIF. That assessment amount, the amount that was charged those companies, is allowed to be passed on to individual policyholders as a fee on their premium. So when they get their premium bill, there would be a fee reflecting the MAIF assessment amount. And so it's all allocated by company based on how much their premium is. And then that gets passed on, is allocated to the individual policyholders. They don't have to do that, but they are allowed to do that, and they always do it. In its early years, MAIF had an assessment pretty much every year until its surplus became pretty stable and it became positive. And then they didn't have assessments anymore after 1989. And the assessment itself is a formula that's in statute. And in essence, what it requires every year is for MAIF to look and see whether or not the amount of money that it's bringing in is sufficient to pay its obligations. And if there's a deficit, then it has to basically subtract that deficit against the surplus. And so when they're left over, if they've still got enough in surplus, then there's no assessment. But like the concern this year, is the projections hold, is that deficit is going to exceed what's left in surplus. And so they will have to make an assessment in order to make up that difference. And then when the companies pay that assessment, they will bill their policyholders for their portion of that assessment.
And so I guess the hope is if we pass this bill or as amended, that we may be able to avoid an assessment, or are we going to be able to avoid an assessment?
I'm not sure we're going to be able to avoid an assessment in 2025 for 2024 performance. You know, MAIF is working hard in order to adjust their rates. They're working with us on that right now. So we're going to have to see where those numbers pan out.
And I
believe-
said that only because I don't know how MAIF has been working lately, but most everybody else sitting at this table have seen a dramatic increase in their insurance, 15%. I think everybody here at least some 30, 40%. Is MAIF, have their customers in the last year seen that same increase?
No, our JCR report that we filed and indicates that over the last 10 years, MAIF's, if you just looked at indicated rates year to year to year, MAIF indicated rates would have had them increasing by, say, 25%. And in that same time frame, over that same period, they took 3%. So they are pretty underwater in terms of their, which is why their surplus has been coming down by 10, sometimes
Sure.
20 or $30 million a year. So at a time in, say, 2021, when we provided this, you know, group with a outline of what other companies are doing, that's the year that MAIF took 1.3 minus. Their overall rates went down 1.3.
Yeah, I think that's troubling for a lot of people who pay insurance, you know, through a regular company, because again, I know personally mine's gone up 30% with 0 accidents and nobody under the age of 25 driving. So I would be interested to see how this could be resolved, because there's also it should be some equality involved in this. Well, you know, I understand that right now the country's going through something. I've been looking into this. You and I have spoken about why the hell I'm paying so much for insurance. And I mean, you gave me an explanation I didn't like, but it was one. So I can't imagine other individuals not having to pay, not having to deal with that same pain that everybody at this table is dealing with. So I look forward to seeing how you can resolve that. Seth?
There we go. There we go. So just clear something up for me. You said that a person comes to, in good faith. So I guess, what does that mean? Are you verifying that they've been turned down by 2 other carriers, or is they just testing in good faith?
Well, nobody verifies that today. So
Okay.
people sign on their application that they have had 2 turn downs. But
And that's it.
Right. Today, the way the system works is that they say that, but there is no audit process that follows that up and says, well, who did you get turned down by? Where's the evidence of that? And the MAIF producer doesn't do that either. So the status quo has been that you take people at their word.
Right. Why?
Well, I don't administer that. That
Right.
would be a question for me.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question, Madam Commissioner. It's file and use right now for MAIF, correct?
Yes, sir.
And under that, you can approve or deny a rate? So
No.
you can't deny MAIF's rate in that instance? You
I
can't
don't,
send them back to them and have them adjust it?
I don't approve rates. I can, under file and use competitive rating, I disapprove the rate under certain circumstances.
So
And there's
you-
a formula that's different for file and use and competitive rating than for prior approval. It's a different formula.
Right, but okay, but if we went back to prior approval, which the General Assembly did away with in 2017, that was because MAIF was hemorrhaging money underneath that system, from what I understand and what I read up on. So what would be essentially, I guess, the difference in your mind? Control?
So the difference would be the point in time, the standard that would apply to when the commissioner can say a rate is inadequate. So under prior approval standards, and I believe that change was made earlier than 2017, but I'll check that. But in the prior approval standard is that from an actuarial standpoint, are the rates inadequate? And that's looking at what the indicated rates are and what you've selected for that indicated rate. Under competitive rating, that's not enough. So if my actuaries say that a rate is not is inadequate and it's not actuarially sound because it's inadequate, I don't have the authority to just disapprove MAFE's rate alone on that basis. I have to go further and say that that inadequate rate would endanger their solvency. And so that's a matter of looking at how much surplus they have over time. So that's how you get to the point where year over year after year. And
Yeah, but
we
MAFE
did a study into, we did an external actuarial evaluation of MAFE's rates and result of a rate filing in 2020. And we brought in an external actuary to go over this. And this standard is what prevented us from disapproving MAFE's rates at that time as inadequate. Because what we couldn't show was that at that point in time, their surplus had dropped so low that there would be, and what would for another company be insolvency, we used triggering the assessment as the standard because that low rate wasn't going to trigger an assessment because they had surplus.
Okay, I mean, I'm just looking here. It looks like prior approval was removed in 2017.
Okay, I
So-
felt,
Okay, I mean,
My-
that's
my
definitely something
apologies.
else. I'd like to know more because my understanding in file of use is that you still have the ability and control to deny it. But if that, and if it's around solvency, that's interesting to me because, I mean, for MAFE, solvency is never even gonna matter. It's not a real thing.
correct, which is,
So-
it's not a good standard because technically they can never be insolvent.
Right. I guess what I'm saying though is if you can change the file and use language to somehow negate the solvency portion of that, then you could kick it back to them. But okay, we'll have further conversation.
Yeah,
Thank
I'm
you.
happy to talk to you about that.
Probably a less nerdy question from Steve. Go ahead, sir.
I guess I'm kind of confused. When we look at this and we start talking about not only will MAFE users' rates go up, but also my rates in this assessment. Is that correct?
The amount that you pay goes up. Your rates don't go up, but there will be a line item charge that is added to your premium. It will say the MAFE assessment.
So my
on it.
premium will go up.
Yes, the
that's what I
amount
meant
that
by
you
rate.
pay will
Okay.
go up.
Have you, I mean, based on some of the testimony in the last bill, being that we are a little bit higher than other states, have you come up with any other remedies for this? Any other suggestions other than raising the rates? Enforcement, anything like that? I don't know if that's under your purview, but have you all thought about other ways of managing this?
When you say this and you talk about the rates, you talk about the uninsured rate?
Yes, the uninsured rate and the cost of the uninsured rate and the people that are failing to pay, right down the line.
So in some ways, they're apples and oranges because they're two different divisions of MAFE, but I appreciate the argument that people make that, well, if MAFE raises its rates, more people will be uninsured. Remember that MAFE only writes about 1% of the market. So only 1% of people are in MAFE. 99% of people, 99% of your constituents are outside of MAFE. And so the people who are not buying insurance, it's not just a MAFE issue. Then I think the numbers are interesting because the 14.1% is a figure that actually comes from industry. And those figures are a little bit different than the figures that we use from the MBA. So like our JCR report shows that there's a pretty consistent 4% of uninsured according to the Motor Vehicle Administration rates. It popped up to about 6.2 during COVID, and then it's come back down to about 4%. If we look at why it is that people are uninsured, I'm sure that there are a variety of reasons. And I think Sandy was accurate in being able to say that some of that may be because people truly just can't afford insurance. And then there are people who choose not to be insured for a variety of other reasons. They feel that.
Okay, back to my question though. Have you come up with another remedy other than all that? I mean, you've given me a lot of numbers we understand. Is there another remedy? Is there something your department can suggest that we're not doing that we could do better? These people are not, they're failing to pay, they're running from this. We're not meeting the goals. If everybody paid their fair share, if everybody got caught that had a hit and run, those types of things are what I'm looking for. Are you involved in anything like that? Suggestions to the General Assembly? Could we do better enforcement? Could you do a better job, not you, but could MAFE do a better job scanning these applicants and ensuring that? Can we do a better job the statewide as far as registration of vehicles, et cetera?
I think that there are things that we could do, and I would be happy to work with my fellow agencies to bring that together. So for example,
well,
we
I-
can,
Okay, I agree with you. I think there are things we can do, but
Yeah.
we're coming in here right now, and again, as it's been brought up, rates have gone up, everything's going skyrocketing right now. Whether these fees are not able to cover their goal or not, we're looking at alternatives that just say, okay, premium payers, I'm back again. I'm gonna gouge you some more. I'm gonna do this, while we're letting things go untouched and unscathed that we could be doing as far as managing the problem otherwise. That's what I'm coming. Thank you.
And I think that's kind of what the bill is trying to do. Is maybe if they're charging their clients a little more, maybe the fund won't be as insolvent. And even if we can't avoid this current assessment, maybe in future years, we won't have to have an assessment because the rates have been increased. MIA is taking more of an act. Go ahead, Steve.
I agree with you for most of that, but pay punishment is only going to get the people who can pay. We're obviously letting people move in this world that have a vehicle and can't get insurance or won't ever get insurance. And what can we do on that end as far as eliminating that? And you're never gonna, you can't make a poor person pay if they don't have the money. I mean, we just can't do it.
Right,
And
You
that's
can't
why I
make a
say,
poor person not drive if they have to get to work.
Well,
So I'm saying,
and I get that, but we're already investing tremendous amounts in WMATA and other things to try and accommodate that. Well, not in my district, they're not.
mine either. So I got you. I'm saying, Steve, I get your point on I was saying, this is it's not a silver bullet, but this is exactly why I was having a problem, because of the fact is we are taking hit. It almost seems like we may not be able to avoid an assessment. Well, I don't want this to happen again in 2 years because MAPE isn't pulling in enough money to keep themselves solvent. And granted, that was never the design, but it can't always be on the shoulders of the people who are trying to do right. Ergo, the people that either, work with their driving record or pay insurance. So we do agree. This isn't a silver bullet. It's just another bit in the arsenal. Hopefully we can do better.
And Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry.
I don't believe there's a question.
I was just gonna thank the committee. I know it's late in session and for their indulgence, and I know that this bill hearing went a little bit long. This is a very, very complicated issue. And to your point, Mr. Chairman, this is not a silver bullet. I think we're gonna have to work on this after session and a great deal between now and the next session to try and trim up what we're missing. But this is a start. So
I'm
thank
going to
you.
reach out to whoever the subcommittee chair is and let them know they really need to get hot on
Yeah,
this.
I think anybody that asked questions today that showed some passion for the subject matter should be on that.
Thank you very much.
Delegate Arns. Thank you.
Good job, Steve. I do believe that concludes this bill hearing. Thank you again to your panel. And I think we are now moving into voting. We might need about 2 or 3 minutes, so please don't go anywhere, guys. We're just gonna pass some stuff out and we'll get ready to get on it. Thank you.
Thank you.